Welcome back to Inside City Hall. For more on Police Commissioner Howard Safir's legal situation, I'm now joined by the attorney representing Monica Nascimento, John S. Carro. Welcome to Inside City Hall. So now it's your turn. Are you relieved and pleased that Safir's new lawyer says now, as you just heard on Inside City Hall, that he's not charging that your client was on drugs or was drunk?
Absolutely, but I didn't hear what I expected to hear and I'm still looking for, and that is that Mr. Safir, the commissioner, is still hiding behind his lawyer. If it was not true, you knew it was not true 5 days ago when this issue broke in the papers and no one said a word and my client was hung out to dry on these allegations.
So you feel that your client has been, I guess, ridiculed in the media by someone with a lot of power, someone with the ability to get in the media, is that right?
Absolutely. There is no stigma attached to being involved in an auto accident and being charged with negligence. Happens every day. But there is a stigma with being charged with driving under the influence of alcohol and or drugs and leaving the scene of the accident, which is not true.
All right, well, we'll get to those details in a second. If, in fact, Safir is withdrawing those charges against her and has fired the lawyer who drew them up and claimed that he, Safir, never had anything to do with those charges, then are you, who is culpable for the charges, and are you contemplating any kind of libel suit?
We're really not. I mean, there are grounds. However, what we're really looking for, if you acknowledge that it was never any truth to it, which is what we've been saying all along, you know that, then what's the harm in apologizing? Mr. Felder saying he feels bad, that does nothing.
Safir said, how could he apologize? He didn't do it. He didn't know what happened.
But he knew 5 days ago when this hit the press, and every article, every news report talked about alcohol and drugs and driving under the influence. This was picked up in Brazil, where this woman's family was, that she's a criminal, an alcoholic. Of course, it gets distorted by the time it reached Brazil. But why didn't they stop it back then? Now, 5 days later, you're still not willing to even apologize? I'm not looking for a public apology.
Mm-hmm. Safir's lawyer, Ralph Felder, says this woman fabricated her name. Why would she, at the scene of an accident, give the wrong name, walk away? And doesn't she deserve, I guess, the visits from the NYPD officers, detectives?
No, for the following reason. She's been very upfront about that. Says what she did was wrong.
Why'd she do it?
What she did because Mrs. Safir identified herself at the scene as the police commissioner's wife. What has that to do with the exchange of information in a property damage situation? All that can do is put the other side in fear. Because in your effect, you're saying, do you know who I am? And this girl had never been in a car accident before. She's 23 years old. She got very scared. Mrs. Safir calls her husband on a cell phone, and then what she does, she gave her license plate number. She gave her license number, but she gave the wrong last name. She panicked. She said she panicked. And if she's going to take the heat from that, she's willing to take the heat for that. But the Safirs took it to another level.
Was there anything wrong with Safir sending two detectives to her home and then calling up Ms. Nascimento's employer?
I've read, for security reasons, I don't buy that. The fact that Mr. Felder just said his Carol Safir was in terror when she learned that it was the wrong last name. The police did a check. They knew who she was. They knew she had no record. That's nonsense. I can only go from personal experience. I represented someone, 7 broken bones, near death, left the scene of an accident. I had a license plate number. 4 months of telephone calls to the detective. I could not get them to go to that man's house. That's a crime to arrest him. So when you hear that this will be done for any citizen in New York, I don't buy that.
What happened in the accident itself? Did she rear-end Carol Safir? Was she responsible for that? Did she admit guilt in that?
Well, there's nothing to admit at this point. The lawsuit was just started. The papers, when they're amended and reserved, will be answered. It's a fender bender. It's stop-and-go traffic on the Queensboro Bridge.
How fast was she going?
My client was going 10 to 15 miles an hour. The damage, which is interesting because the lawsuit alleged $6,000 worth of damage. Today I talked to the insurance company. They have an appraisal. The rear-end damage was $235.
And what was the extent, as far as Ms. Nascimento could tell at the time, of Carol Safir's injuries?
She told her at the scene that she was fine.
She said she was fine?
She was fine.
There was no ambulance?
No ambulance, no police. No, I've yet to see, and it's very interesting to see. The fact that they're going to withdraw some of the claims, obviously it sounds like they're still going forward with the lawsuit, and we will vigorously defend that lawsuit.
Okay. What does she think of Safir now? How does she believe that he handled it?
Well, she thinks he's a little bit heavy-handed. She's shocked that they would try to... this girl works to support her disabled mother. She has very limited insurance and no resources. Are you really going to go after her to get a judgment? You're going to garnish her salary? What's going on here?
Okay. John S. Carro, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
It's time for break.